is the piece of resistance that I was going to tell you about today that I am just now still learning about. This is really where we get this idea of Shadow Hayek was so much more, was so much smarter than some archaeologists and scholars give these people credit for. So there's this teeny tiny little figurine, right? Of on the front, it may or may not be a pregnant belly, right? It just means maybe means well fed, right? But it's a woman's body, hands on big breasts, big protruding belly. And on the back, it is her again as a skeleton. So you can just imagine how this sets off all sorts of excitement for people in the archaeology world, right? So is this again this visual metaphor that combines I don't know, what would you call it? Like that combining opposite. It's a hybridization of life and death. Is it religion that's saying, okay, this is a goddess and she's a goddess of life and death? And we have those, right? We have those when you look at Hindu societies. We have like, look at Kali Ma, look at like, we have, when we're bringing these ideas up, we see them in the residuals of ancient culture. We see them in non-literate societies. Non-literate societies express themselves through iconic forms like sculpture, songs, stories, riddles, chants, laments, myths. The imagery here shows a hybridization again of life and death, human, animal, and it shows then that both sides. And this is again having to eat meat, right, to live, but that means you have to kill. So it's like this culture is exploring through the dramatization of life and death what it means to have to be a human, how to develop death rituals, how to most honor everything they are doing. It's an honorable thing. So this, this culture really was like really hot for about almost 2000 years, but the area itself and the obsidian trade around it was really 4000 years, and it really set the stage for a vibrant atmosphere of cooperation. So this argument that there's always been war, that there's so much argument here that instead interaction and knowledge sharing and trading, early trading would, under for all of this time period, would, there's no evidence of plunder, no evidence of rivalry and conflict among all these settlements. There all of this stuff flourishing would not have happened under the stress of hostility, which we're going to see in a couple of thousand years, as we get into next week. So as we wrap this up, again, we're talking about this area right here, right? Look, this becomes Greece, you all. This becomes Italy. So now we're coming out of the Neolithic, as in thousands of years. We are now in those formulating years of what's going to become our Greek goddesses that we're going to look at in a couple of weeks. That's what's going to happen to our Sumerian gods and goddesses over here next week. So the idea then of, let me skip ahead, of this mythological crescent, they say, right? Around 6000 BC, you start to see female sculptures, all like with, and just one, guys, with birds again. Let's look at birds, like with long necks and beaks and bird masks. Look at how many there are, you guys. This is when just like I've gone to Greece now, and I've gone to a couple of like all of these bird women. Now, some scholars are going to say they're not goddesses. Some are going to say they are goddesses. Some are going to say that maybe they, like the same thing we said about the female figurines. Maybe they're a charm that you carry with you, or something that you bury in the ground. Look at also Egypt is also developing at this time, right? So it has the Nile River goddess, also very prolific. So all of this, and that was just bird, right? I could have gone off on showing you frog and women, or bear women, or lion and women, or so we've carried, these cultures have carried down the messages. We've all seen the Lion King. We still think of the lion as king of the forest and fierce and powerful and blah blah, right? Well, that comes from somewhere, and we could see its legacy going back to the Paleolithic if we wanted to, right? But it's carried through this idea of a possible shamanic religion. How cool is that, right? The shamanic religions still exist to this day. You see them in Siberia, you'll see them in different places. You can certainly research it on your own, or I can give you some tidbits. But by 6000 BC, you have this broadening of this art, and it is flourishing as we get to the end of the Neolithic. But what scholars suggest from these masks, just the masks on the bird women alone, mean ritual, shape-shifting, this again, this human bird hybridization, so a shamanic integration, and the uniting of the worlds. We want to be one with the world, right? We want to be one with that power, whatever that crazy energy is. We want to be a part of it. Now, there's another argument. James Mellart in the 60s was really cool, and he picked up on good old Mariah Gimbutas's ideas of goddess and this. Well, that kind of did this flurry thing, and then people lost interest. So this guy named Ian Hodder, in the 1990s, he picked up the torch, and he went back to Çatalhöyük and got some money, got some scholars, got some shareholders, and said, okay, I think that this central focus of women are reproducers. That's it. And women needed to be controlled because he associated them with wild animals. That's what he said is the connection with Çatalhöyük. See what he's doing? He's starting to undermine what other scholars have said, like Gimbutas, and he's starting to say that it's all about the male hunter still. That when you have a bear, like our bear imagery, that's all about male prowess. When you have, so they all this disagreement about what Çatalhöyük should be, but it's that he's linking the wildness and of the hybridization of this imagery with just fertility and something to be controlled. I think that's a really modern way of casting a very misogynistic gaze, right? Especially we've already proven, right? The hunter stuff that had women too, right? We also then Hodder by 2004 announced that his new research team found fresh evidence of a peaceful, non-hierarchical society. So he's basically agreeing with Mellart and Gimbutas and some other people, but he just wanted to put it in his terms. So there's a lot of, when you think about, again, these archaeologists, it's a very, and we're going to get into this when we look at Crete, it's very much this, who's got the power, who's got the voice, and the voice sticks around. So yeah. So I think I'm going to pause there. Look at that, it's almost an hour. But the big thing is it's really hard for our culture, our modern eyes today, to say, okay, well, that's just this fertility goddess, whatever, or that's just a version of a male, like just like a male god. No, what Gimbutas and what so many scholars that first had eyes on Çatalhöyük were really arguing was this is not just a female version of the monotheistic god. It's not. It is a symbol, a cultural code that unites all of the ideas of what is sacred at the time: trees, animals, blah, 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 right? And the human, then, it's not necessarily this human just so she can give birth, right? Because that would be reductive, right? It's about this uniting of what is nature in order to tap its energies, its wealth. And that's very shamanistic. And if you ever study shamanism, this is exactly the kind of the world that the shaman enters as a healer, as someone, as a faith participant, is very much along these lines that that some of the early scholars of this work have looked at. And I still think it's one of the best ways to look at Çatalhöyük. Question.